2025 unusual hurricane forecast. And looking at the patterns emerging for 2025, it is expected that we'll see an unprecedented spike in hurricane activity, not because of natural climate cycles, but because the powers behind the curtain have fine tuned their technology, their capabilities. It is speculated that one or more storms will be steered right through the heart of the Caribbean in a manner never before witnessed, with devastating precision. Look, hey guys, what's happening? So, we're going to talk about hurricanes today because get set, it's going to be one of the bumpy hurricane seasons. The names are already here: Andrea, Barry, Chantal, Dorian, Erin, Fernand, Gabriel, Umberto, Imelda, Jerry, Karen, Lorenzo, Melissa, Nestor, Olga, Pablo, Rebecca, Sebastian, Tanya, Van, Wendy. And those are the names that you have. And of course, if we use up all of those names, we usually go on to the others that they have aside. So it's going to be a very bumpy hurricane. I spoke to you already last year about what they intend to do. I think I spoke to you earlier this year as well. But I'm just going to recap the information for you because sometimes people forget. And so when people forget, it's always best to remind them. This is a community that we try to remind everyone as to what is happening. So let's get back to the information. Now, you would remember that in the early 2000s, there was a covert project called Project Typhoon. It was initiated and it involved what you call a combination of weather modification technologies that were already in the early stages of development by military powers like the US, China, and these technologies included things like HARP, the High Frequency Research Program, combined with advances in weather modification science, which allowed for people say the artificial amplification of storms in targeted regions. And if you want to talk about things in targeted regions, you would remember like Beryl and Maria and Ivan. Those people would tell you, and those who study this, that it was targeted. Those of you who realize that Maria and those hurricanes just came out of nowhere, turned to a Cat 5. We never had a Cat 5 before in the Caribbean. And then you would remember Ivan that came and sat over Grenada for almost 8 hours, was headed for St. Vincent, and then just made the dip south. And over the years, the research would have shown that these were guided. Yes, they came out of nature, but they were amplified, right? So at first, the project seemed just to be another geopolitical thing that powers want to exert their influence. But then this HARP program became something where nations will use it now to start taking leverage on smaller nations. And the Caribbean is always a testing ground. And some people ask me, well, why the Caribbean? Well, it's a perfect storm, of vulnerability, high risk, geography, and economic importance. And then these islands are still reeling from devastating effects of hurricanes over the last decade. And in 2025, the climate data indicates that we might witness something unprecedented. Now, hurricanes are manipulated to disrupt, major shipping routes. You can shift tourism inflows. You can create opening for military installations under the guise of humanitarian aid. A lot of things. And this Caribbean region of ours is one of the regions where a lot of things can happen. Such a project Typhoon, which is syndicated, they can direct hurricane paths with an eerie level of precision. And if you looked at Beryl, you would have noticed that Beryl had absolute great precision. Beryl came from a tropical wave. It turned to a depression, a storm, and then a cat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in less than 72 hours. It was something that everyone says just looked out of the normal, not the everyday thing. And then when you go back now and you're reading and you're listening to them, they can tell you these people who study the weather and study these things are telling you it was definitely amped up as an amplification of Beryl. So this might sound like some science fiction thing, but these storms at their worst aren't entirely natural. So the technology could be as advanced as creating supercharged storm fronts. So think of them like massive, highly destructive weather bombs dropping down with the pinpoint accuracy. The moment these storms hit, they're like immediately used to trigger emergency relief. You have some places where military interventions are necessary and economic rebalances in the affected areas. But what if I tell you that these interventions are just covers for something far more nefarious? And you may ask me, what is the real agenda, right? Well, beyond the obvious control of resources, the real estate in post storm reconstruction, the goal is far more intricate: to shift the Caribbean's geopolitical alliances and move wealth from local communities into the hands of mega corporations and different people. I tell you something, someone said to me there was a project now going on in the Grenadines, and someone said, you still don't think that Beryl was amped up? Because the individual who's there now, man, I tell you, it's crazy. So keep your eye out for these things. And these Caribbean islands, though small in size, they hold immense geopolitical power due to their proximity to global shipping lanes and their massive untapped natural resources. That's one of the things that we have that a lot of people want. It's untapped. You hear them talk about untapped destination, virgin territory. So it's said that certain powerful players are now quietly siphoning off these resources, purchasing up land. And if you look at it, like I said to you, there are some things happening in the Grenadines with St. Vincent the Grenadines. Someone just pointed me to Barbados in the Northeast. There are a lot of things that are happening. So they're purchasing up these land and the laying groundwork for future relocation projects. Now, the region is becoming what I would say a major experimental ground for new technologies that no one wants to admit, whether it's climate engineering or even more nefarious weather altering devices. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it is happening. And so, what's even unsettling is basically the potential psychological warfare being waged on our people. Some analysts suspect that the manipulation of the hurricane season is part of an effort to destabilize the Caribbean region, because the Caribbean region is now in a battlefield for between China, America, Europe. Like I just told you about, the European colonizers were coming back. So there's a constant threat of destruction, um, economic wreckage, and the resulting dislocation of communities. And all this could be strategically engineered to break down social cohesion and create vulnerable population that can be easily controlled, relocated, or even silenced. And in some places, you're talking about areas where you're going to have elections and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that are happening. I mean, 2025 unusual hurricane forecast, and looking at the patterns emerging for 2025, it is expected that we'll see an unprecedented spike in hurricane activity, not because of natural climate cycles, but because the powers behind the curtain have fine tuned their technology, their capabilities. It is speculated that one or more storms will be steered right through the heart of the Caribbean in a manner never before witnessed, with devastating precision. Look out for this. All right. Anytime you hear a meteorological office say, look, warning, something is coming, don't take it for granted. Pay attention. We saw what happened with Beryl. Of course, none of this will be confirmed on the news, and every evidence that might point to human interference will either be suppressed or attributed to natural anomalies. It's a perfect cover up. I mean, the world will watch as the Caribbean is once again ravaged and in chaos. There's new alliances will be formed and new deals will be struck. I told you about just what happened recently. And the syndicate, of course, they will be smiling from behind the scenes, ready to cash in on the storm's aftermath. There's so many people coming now to give the Caribbean a helping hand in so many, many, many things that are happening. Don't get twisted. In short, what I want to tell you really that the 2025 hurricane season won't just be another year of bad weather. It's going to be the climatic unveiling of a more calculated and sinister game plan. The hurricanes, they're just the beginning. It's just a web of manipulation. I mean, you have to be very, very careful these days. And like always, I say to you, These things have been foretold. They will just get worse and worse. All right. So you may say the idea resonate with you. You may say it doesn't. I'm just telling you to be on your guard this hurricane season. It is not going to be a good one. Guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Leave your comments in the section below.